we have breaking news on a controversial proposal Vladimir Putin made to the president. The White House has apparently changed its tune. We'll explain that. But I just want to take a moment off the top of the show here to just remind everyone how we got to today. So let's rewind back to Helsinki, Finland, Monday. Here was President Trump on the world stage.
My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
That is the President of the United States directly contradicting our nation's intelligence agencies. But wait, because a day later, back at the White House, the president essentially is saying, whoa, wouldn't. That was a slip of the tongue.
The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. Sort of a double negative.
I said this Wednesday, I'll say it again. That was ridiculous, right? So the president now says he misspoke, that despite all of his comments really in the last 18 months, that he does agree with U.S. intel chiefs. But then, in the very same breath, this.
Let me be totally clear in saying that, and I've said this many times, I accept our intelligence community's conclusion that Russia's meddling in the 2016 election took place. Could be other people also. There's a lot of people out there.
Again, let's just be clear. U.S. intelligence across the board says it was Russia who interfered in the U.S. election, not other people. The very next day at the White House, the president is then asked a key question.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is Russia still targeting the U.S.? Is Russia still targeting the U.S., Mr. President?
Thank you very
let's
much.
go. Make your way out. No, you don't believe that to be the case? Let's go. We're finished here.
Now, to many, initially, including lawmakers up on Capitol Hill, that was a resounding no, signaling Trump now thinks the U.S. is in the clear, that Russia's attacks are a thing of the past. And that forced Sarah Sanders to give yet another White House clarification this week, saying that the president was saying no to further questions, not to Russian attacks. So, where are we today?
You haven't condemned Putin specifically. Do you hold him personally responsible?
Well, I would, because he's in charge of the country, just like I consider myself to be responsible for things that happen in this country. So certainly, as the leader of a country, you would have to hold him responsible, yes.
What'd you say to him?
Very strong on the fact that we can't have meddling. I let him know we can't have this. We're not going to have it. And that's the way it's going to be.
So that's what we're hearing from the president now. Could have heard it before, when he was sitting with Putin, standing next to Putin right there, or talking about Putin in the interviews right after the fact. But all right, so now Trump is saying Putin did it. But that's only part of the story. Did anyone catch this comment back on Monday in Helsinki when Trump was talking about election interference? Spent a great deal of time talking about it. And President Putin may very well want to address it. And very strongly, because he feels very strongly about it, and he has an interesting idea. An interesting idea. So now we know what that interesting idea is. In their private meeting, Putin tosses out this suggestion, which is this. He said that Russia will allow Robert Mueller's team to come on into his country, question a dozen Russians charged with interfering in the election, but in return, Putin wants to interrogate Americans. Moments ago, the White House now says it is opposed to this proposal, but not after major backlash. Because again, Sarah Sanders at the podium yesterday when asked about it did not immediately shut it down.
The president's going to meet with his team, and we'll let you know when we have an announcement on that.
For a second, is that a topic that came up in their conversation? Did President Putin raise this with President Trump?
There was some conversation about it, but there wasn't a commitment made on behalf of the United States, and the president will work with his team, and we'll let you know if there's an announcement on that front.
Was a conversation, wasn't a commitment. That's not what the State Department was saying.
The overall assertions that have come out of the Russian government are absolutely absurd.
And the breaking news now that the White House has just put out a statement to clarify the president's position on this. So, Caitlin Collins, you're at the White House. We're talking a lot about clarifications this week. What's the deal now?
Well, Brooke, it is a proposal that the president initially said was incredible. The State Department said it was absurd, and now the White House is saying it is off the table. The press secretary, Sarah Sanders, just now issuing this statement saying it is a proposal that was made in sincerity by President Putin, but President Trump disagrees with it. Hopefully, President Putin will have the 12 identified Russians come to the United States to prove their innocence or guilt. So this is this proposal that President Trump came out at this press conference, said that Vladimir Putin had made, essentially that in exchange for letting the special counsel Robert Mueller question those 12 military intelligence officers who were charged with attacking an American election, that they would be able to question some Americans they believe have interfered in their affairs, including the former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, who has been incredibly critical of Russia and of Vladimir Putin and of his human rights record. Now, this is astonishing, Brooke, that the White House was even considering this idea. That's why we had 24 hours of backlash after Sarah Sanders was asked twice during that press briefing if the White House had made a decision on this, if they were considering it, and she said she did not rule it out, Brooke. She said that the president and his team were considering it and that there was no firm commitment, but that they would get back to us. Now, that is what prompted that bipartisan backlash from Democrats and from Republicans on Capitol Hill, who couldn't believe that the White House even said they were entertaining this idea. Now, after 24 hours of that, they've come back to say that it is off the table. The president does disagree with it. But then in that last section of the statement, you saw that they said hopefully the Russians will send those 12 military intelligence officers to the United States. That is an idea that largely a lot of people have believed is not likely to happen. Even the president's own national security advisor, John Bolton, who said that just simply wasn't something that was on the table. It was more of a show for them to indict those 12 Russians for hacking the election. But Brooke, day 4 of the fallout from the president's explosive press conference in Helsinki, and we are seeing yet again the White House having to clean up one more decision after there was backlash from all throughout Washington.
Caitlin, thank you. We touched on this a second ago here, but after several days of seeing this fallout from the summit with between Putin and Trump, Putin is now weighing in. So for that angle, let's go to our senior international correspondent, Matthew Chance, who's live for us this evening there in Moscow. And so what is Putin saying?
Well, Brooke, I mean, with all the confusion with the conflicting remarks being made from the White House, at least you can say that Vladimir Putin is being consistent. He's not flip-flopping on this issue at all. He thought the meeting went really well. He thought there were some very useful agreements made, although he's not made clear exactly what the nature of those agreements were. But, and he's jumped to the defense of Donald Trump, saying that essentially there are those in the United States who, for political reasons, are trying to undermine the positive results of that meeting. Take a listen to the Russian president defend his American counterpart.
We see that there are forces in the United States that are prepared to casually sacrifice Russia-U.S. relations, to sacrifice them for their ambitions in the course of an internal political battle.
Right, so an internal political battle, that's consistently how the Kremlin, how Russian officials, the Russian Foreign Ministry has always characterized the idea that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, or even the idea that there was any kind of hacking by Russia of the US presidential political system. And they've stuck to that line time and again. Remember, just to characterize how well this meeting went from a Russian point of view, Sergei Lavrov, who's the Russian foreign minister, normally very restrained in his remarks, he called the talks magnificent, better than super. And that's worryingly high praise coming from a Kremlin official when it comes to this meeting.